Welcome to Wireless LAN Weekly, a podcast focused on the wireless networking professional. We aim to educate, inform, entertain, and inspire. Get ready to listen and enjoy. Now to our host of the show, Keith Parsons.
Welcome to episode 15 of Wireless LAN Weekly. Glad you could join us. We're kind of happy that we've got all the way to episode 15. That sounds pretty good. When we first started, the fear we had was that Wireless LAN Weekly as a podcast would go the way of some other wireless LAN podcasts and, succumb to pod fade. That was one of our great fears, so we tried to get as much content together so we could continue on, and now we're here out at episode 15. I'm glad you stayed with us all this time, and we have more episodes ready to go. So today, before we get started, we want to talk a little bit about some of the certification programs and books that we'll be covering. The first up is Laura Chappell. I've been working with Laura Chappell for a long time. Love to have her on the show. And she'll be talking to us about her new Wireshark book. So Laura's great with her new Wireshark book. Big fat thing. Highly recommend you get it if you're into Wireshark or network analysis at all. Then in the second half of the show, we'll have Todd Lammle. Todd's of CCNA fame. He's written many books for the Cybex imprint. And coming up now, pretty quick, will be the CCNA Wireless book. It's not available yet, but we got him online to talk to us a little bit about the CCNA Wireless program, and he'll be the second half. Later this week, I'll be personally down at Interop, down in Las Vegas. I'm scheduled to speak and be part of a panel discussion on 802.11n with Lisa Pfeiffer and Joe Epstein and Bob O'Hara, and it should be a good time. So look forward to next week. I'm going to see if I can get some recordings from Interop, and we'll use some things from Interop in the next episode. So glad you could come join us today, and we'll start with the regular portions, then on to Laura and Todd for the rest of the show. Thanks.
Today's wireless networking definition from the CWNP Dictionary of Wireless Terms and Acronyms.
Wireless IDS and IPS. A WIDS or wireless IDS is a wireless intrusion detection system. These are used to monitor the radio spectrum for the presence of unauthorized rogue access points in clients and then report them to an administrative system when detected. In addition to detection, a wireless IPS also attempts to prevent network access to those devices through specific countermeasures.
Rant Pet Peeve. What really bugs you? 60 seconds of complaining starts now.
Hi, this is Elaine Rogers here, and my pet peeve today is when I go onto a forum where people are talking about various different IT things, and somebody says something that somebody else doesn't agree with, so the other person comes on and they'll pass a comment on the forum or possibly in a blog. Oh, no, you're wrong. I'm right. So a big argument ensues, and it never ceases to amaze me, the egos that are involved and the back and forth of, no, you're wrong, I'm right. No, you're wrong, I'm right. So one guy makes a point, another guy or girl comes in, no, that point isn't right, my point is right. So this wrong and right goes back and forth, and it is one of the pet peeves that I have. Now, that's all very fine, but in the end, it can become quite an argument, and there's name-calling, there's picking out specifics like spelling errors, grammar errors, bad language, again, the name-calling. So I was thinking about this, and I had come up with 5 tips of possibly how not to let this get out of hand, and they are as follows. Firstly, count to 10. That sounds a bit silly, but it does help. Gives you a new breath of fresh air. Secondly, know that whatever their reaction is all about them. Thirdly, because it's all about them, don't take it personally. Fourthly, stick to the facts if you must respond. So don't just react, and don't get into the cat and mouse game. And lastly, just to remember that you really have no idea what they're thinking, and don't assume that you know what they're thinking. We all know what assume does. It makes an ass of you and me.
Things every wireless LAN professional needs to know. Gear up, buckle down, and stand by for the real techie stuff.
Well, hello again. This is Keith Parsons with Wireless LAN Weekly Podcast, and today's segment has Laura Chappell, and today we'll be talking about network analysis. Laura just rolled out a new book, the Wireshark Book, some 800 pages, big fat book, great book. And we'll be talking about that and a little bit of her history and how she got into networking. So glad you could join us today, Laura.
Thanks a lot, Keith. It's always fun working with you.
Yeah, we've had many years together, and it's been kind of fun.
Many years, Keith. Do you know, I think we were on the road on and off every other week for almost 7 years there or something. It was
a long time. Yeah. So, but now you get to just stay home and write books. Much nicer.
It is nice. You know, I like not traveling for a little bit, and I'm sure that the TSA appreciates that I'm home and not coming through with all of my gadgets through the airports.
But American Airlines, they're missing out there a little bit. What'd you get, like 2 million miles or something?
Yeah, I hit my 2 million miles. Yeah,
that's all. Just 2 million miles.
Just 2 million. Yeah.
Well, can you? Our audience obviously are people who are interested in network analysis, specifically for wireless LANs. How did you get into networking analysis in the first part?
Oh, gosh, this goes all the way back to the Novell days. You know, I was working at Novell when Novell bought a company called Exelan Corporation. And Exelan made the old Lanalyzer hardware product. You know, they were these full-size boards, and they went in the old compact lunch boxes. And Ray Norda basically said, you know, I'm not sure what's going on with this new company. Why don't you go check it out? So they did a training for us one day, and they tapped into the Novell networks at that time. And what's interesting is this was in the day of, I think we were on NetWare 2.15C at that time. Those of you that are old-time Novell people, you know this is a long time ago. And when they tapped into the cabling system, we could see the NCP calls going across the cabling system, you know, the 2222s for request and a 3333 for reply. And at that time, we could see the usernames and passwords go across in clear text. And once I saw that, I knew that was it. And that was what I wanted to do the rest of my life. And I was really fortunate to be able to stay with the Lanalyzer product all the way till the day they got rid of it. And then, you know, when I went out on my own, I just basically started offering analysis services. So rarely does a day go by that I don't see packets. I know today I've got a project to look at some SQL communications to try to figure out what's going on with this database communications on the network. It's never boring. Absolutely never boring. So I've been lucky. You've
been lucky, and you kind of took the ride there from the very beginning. That was one of the first analyzers out there.
Yeah, that's right. And the early sniffer was out at that point too. And I remember, you know, they would bring in these tools, and it was just fascinating.
I'm just, you know, glad to hear the passion in your voice when it comes to talking about packets.
You know, it's still exciting. And on writing the Wireshark Network Analysis book, a lot of people asked, you know, is there any new stuff in there? But yeah, that was my chance to really sit down and go through some of the stuff that I get to see on a regular basis. So one of the sections in the book, I actually got to do an application analysis session. I've always wanted to kind of teach people, yeah, this is how you do application analysis. When you're trying to figure out whether this app is going to run properly on your wired or wireless network, you know, what are you looking for? And it sort of just dropped in my lap that a friend of mine called me and said, hey, you know, there's this program, and you can load it on a web server, and it's supposed to optimize your web browsing sessions. But, you know, does it really do that? Well, the company that made that program, they had loaded the software up on Microsoft's SharePoint website server. So not only was I getting to do an application analysis, but it's on a Microsoft website where they've loaded this tool. And in the book, the guys that made the software told me, this is how you can load the web page with the accelerator software enabled, and this is how you can load the web page without it. So everyone can go through and do those same application analysis steps that I did. And it just shows them, look, these are the charts and graphs that you want to look at. These are the ones that are going to tell you how much impact this app is going to do. So there's so many things that I got to put in the book that I just, you know, that never really fit into a class per se, or maybe an article. You know, it was my time to really sit down and put it all together. And still, as I mentioned to you, you know, the cutting room floor around me is just littered with what could easily be put together in additional books or articles. I mean, there's so much stuff that I didn't get to fit because of the binding limitation. We really should have gone to some massive binding solution that allowed us to have a 15-inch binding set to fit it all. It was really a great experience to put it out on paper.
Well, you've got the book now. You're also working on some courses and a certification exam. Is that right?
That's right. So, a lot of people know that we released the certification very early, and we did it in a virtual environment where you would log in and you would be in this environment. There were some fundamental problems with that, and part of it had to do with the security of the test questions themselves. And because we wanted to move into the realm of being an industry standard certification program, we had to pull it back from that release format. So we are now at the point of we should be ready to test the certification exam. It's the Wireshark Certified Network Analyst exam, and we should be ready to begin testing that in the early weeks of May. And our deadline is by the end of quarter 2, 2010, this test will be out in the industry. And right now we have a huge waiting list of people that want to be notified when it's ready. And people can find out more information if they go to wiresharku.com. You'll see a little tab there for certification. And if you're interested in knowing on the date that it actually releases, and it's going to be literally flipping a switch, and it's available at 500 centers globally. And if they want to know when that happens, they can just put their name on that list. And on the day that it releases, I'll be sending out a note to those people to say, okay, it's out, it's available. Here's the registration page. And, it should be a very interesting experience to watch people getting their network analysis certification. This is one of those certifications that, hey, you can be a Cisco CISSP, but knowing and understanding the traffic flow is important no matter what your specialization is. And whether you're wired or wireless, your wireless traffic, chances are your server's not wireless, your server's still wired. So you got to know not only wireless, but you have to know the wired environment. And you got to know TCP. A lot of people don't really understand the inner workings of TCP and how TCP has changed over the years. And we've got implementations now where you can go to one vendor and find that they're implementing TCP in a totally different way than somebody else. And because of that, we have incompatibilities that, we always say, well, we have standards. We're not going to have incompatibility. We have standards. If you meet the standards, well, TCP itself has been altered with all of these extra enhancements and additions. And you have one vendor that's taking advantage of these things. You have another that's not. And it causes some problems. So the only way you'll be able to know that that's the issue is by tapping in and listening to the network.
Well, your book's out. Thanks for my copy. It was a great read. Well, I haven't finished it yet. Obviously, it's a monster book. If someone wanted to prepare for the certification exam, is there enough in the book? And if they practice on their own to prepare themselves?
Yeah, well, what we did, and first I should tell your audience that Keith was great, and he did a great review of the wireless LAN chapter. And you'll see, Keith, that chart you did for that chapter is still one of the things I'm getting feedback from people just saying, oh, this is a cool chart. So for those of you that have the book, take a look at the wireless LAN chapter. And I believe when you get somewhere around, page 529 or something like that, you'll see Keith's chart in there. But in the beginning of every chapter, we put down the objectives for the test. The book is very closely tied into the test. And that's why the primary title is Wireshark Network Analysis, but the subtitle is that this is the official study guide for the Wireshark Network Analyst Certification Program. So it's got a title and it's got a subtitle.
It's the ultimate guide.
It is, yes, it is the ultimate guide. So if you look at the beginning of every chapter, you'll see that I put down the objectives. And when the test questions were being written, they were written to match a specific objective. So everything's very tied together. At the end of every chapter, I also finished up with some questions and answers. I want people to understand these are the kinds of questions that you should be able to answer if you are going for this certification program. So you'll see in the back of the wireless chapter, defining what is monitor mode, being able to understand what the difference is between promiscuous mode and monitor mode when you are capturing wireless traffic. The difference between the radio tap header being applied to the beginning of a packet or no radio tap header. What is that radio tap header and how does that help you understand what's going on? So the end of every chapter finishes up with review questions and the answers are right on the next page. You don't have to go flipping to the back of the book. They're right on the next page. And also throughout the book, we have case studies in there of how people are using Wireshark today to solve problems. We ended up with 45 case studies that made it in the book but hundreds of case studies that did not make it in the book. And we'll put those up on the wiresharkbook.com website over time. I'll start feeding those up for people to read. I just have to go through, edit them, review them, talk to the authors again, see if we've got screenshots or trace files. And then we'll start, piping some of that additional material up there on the book website.
Well, for those who aren't interested in the exam, I still think the book and the process of going through, one, Wireshark is free. You can just go download it. And two, you have the trace files that they could practice on. So even if they can't figure out how to capture them right away, they can start learning. And what I've seen is people, if you understand how the protocol works, you can troubleshoot.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't, it's just a big black box and you move things around.
Exactly. And at the wiresharkbook.com website, if you go into the download section, you will see that you can go and you can just say, look, I just want to grab everything that's out there if you want. The very first link in the download section allows you just to grab absolutely everything. But also I have a bunch of the channelizer recordings that I referred to in the book out there. So if you're interested in looking at, interference from a different phone system or a microwave or this or that, you can easily go and take a look and download those channelizer recordings. The channelizer software, this is from MetaGeek. You can go to metageek.net and you can download the channelizer software. You can run the channelizer software on your system and then bring in one of those recordings. It's just like you're sitting next to me at the moment that we're capturing the signals. So all that stuff is available in the download section.
So even if you don't have an AirPCAP card or you don't have a WiSpy card, you can still learn from your experience and kind of, look over your shoulder as you're doing things.
Exactly. And if somebody downloads the book trace files, there's 222 meg of book trace files. You'll look at the naming scheme that I used there. You'll see that WLAN is in front of all of the trace files that are wireless trace files. But again, wired or wireless trace files, if you're troubleshooting at the IP layer or higher, it doesn't matter if you're wired or wireless. And now you're troubleshooting network layer or all the way up through application layer. But there's a ton of trace files in there. And the back of the book does have a list of those trace files, but I also put the master list of the trace files up in the trace files directory, so you can print that out and see what is it that's so interesting about, this one trace file. What should I be looking for? And you'll see that there's a PDF file you can print, and that'll give you some hints of things that you want to look for.
Well, great. I know you years ago, and as we started a minute ago, you started with Analyzer. I'm sure you've moved on through Sniffer and Wild Packets and all sorts of those. Can you tell us why you kind of settled on Wireshark?
It's interesting because I actually made the switch over to Wireshark. I think it's got to be 7 years ago, maybe something like that. I was at a conference and I had been working with Wireshark. We had the Laura's Lab Kit that we used to give out every year, which you remember that a long time ago, giving out those CDs and DVDs. And I had asked Gerald for permission to put Wireshark on it very early when it was ethereal back then. And still, while it was ethereal, I challenged myself once and said, I'm going to see if I can work with just this open source product and do all the things I've been doing now for customers using these commercial products. At that time, I was using the EtherPeak product, which eventually became the OmniPeak product by Wild Packets. And I was using the full-blown sniffer for both Token Ring and for Ethernet. And I thought, well, let me see. It just seemed like the majority of what I could do, I seemed to be able to do with Ethereal, what Wireshark used to be called back then. And so I stood up at a conference and said, you know what, I'm going to go for 1 year. For 1 year, I'm not going to touch a commercial product, and I'm going to see if I can survive with Wireshark only. And that was it. I have never picked up a commercial product other than when a customer wants to compare features. I have never looked back, never needed to pick one up again. And what I found is that because you have all these developers collaborating on Wireshark and adding their own dissectors and adding their own pieces and parts to it, you'll find that Wireshark's ability to understand packets, it just excels compared to the other ones out there. You find that the people that are, at Intel that are working with the 802.11n specs and things like that, they're putting pieces and parts in Wireshark because they need to be able to dissect the 802.11n traffic. And so they are building their own dissectors, and then they hand them over to Gerald and say, here, add this into Wireshark. you find all these vendors that have their proprietary communication protocols. They write their dissectors, they hand them off to Gerald and say, go ahead and put them out there for the public. So it's turned into such a strong product. And we have a new version coming up. This 1.4 version will be out hopefully within the next 30 days or so in the month of April, May of 2010. And it's a completely different experience working with it. I can actually open up much larger trace files. I can open up a 1 gig trace file with the new version. And our ability to ignore packets and to right-click and add a column very quickly. And the speed factor is just incredible. It just changed the experience quite a bit. Wireshark was getting kind of bogged down with a lot of the features people were adding, and it was getting slower and slower. And so this feels like a whole rebirth of Wireshark, this 1.4 version that's coming up. So I'm really excited. I can't wait. Keep bugging Gerald all the time. When is it going to be ready? When's it going to be ready? So, but you can go out and get it now. You can go out to the developers area and give it a try.
Well, one of the other questions I had for you was Wireshark. One of the complaints that I hear when I mention it to my students or others is like, "Oh man, that's so hard. It's like hardcore." So, Case Technologies has Pilot. Can you tell us the difference between a Pilot's interface and how you'd use Pilot compared to using Wireshark directly?
Oh, yeah. Well, Pilot is specifically built to give you the high-level view of what's happening on the network. It's the charting and the graphing and the reporting tool that Wireshark doesn't have built into it. I mean, Wireshark's got some charts and graphs, but it doesn't have anything to deal with long-term trends or massive amounts of traffic. In Pilot basically can launch Wireshark, but you run Pilot and you can either open up a huge amount of trace files and have Pilot build the charts and the graphs for you, and you can get your minimums, your maximums, your averages. You can define what your sampling levels are. But what I really like about Pilot is that if you see a little area of traffic where you see an anomaly occurred, you can click and drag over the sudden spike in a graph and say, send that to Wireshark. Then it opens up in Wireshark and you can look at the packets just during that moment of the anomaly. It's very different than working in the world of Wireshark where, boy, a lot of times we rely on the expert system to locate the anomalies. We might rely on color coding, but we don't have the ability really to pull up these huge amounts of data. We still have some limitation with Wireshark. We're not going to pull up 100 gig of data with Wireshark and be cruising along. It's going to be entirely too painful. Every time you apply a display filter, it's going to take you another 6 to 8 weeks for that thing to load. So Pilot was made to work in an entirely different way to display what's going on. And they've got so many views in Pilot so that you can say, I'm interested in the top talkers, and I also want to see what are the top protocols that are on the network. I want to graph out all of the information from the wireless LAN environment, the signal strength. Maybe as you were walking around a facility, it will graph that out for you. And then again, you can just click and drag over a section and say, okay, now I want to see that inside of Wireshark. So they're tied together. But probably my favorite part about Pilot is that it has saved me literally days and days of time. When you go out and you fix a problem, you listen to the traffic and you figure out what the problem is and you point the finger. You're the only finger that matters, the network analyst finger. You point the finger, go through, they fix the problem, whatever. Even if you're an internal IT professional, you've got to make yourself a little bit more visible, especially in this economy. So jotting down a simple document to say, this is what the problem is, this is how we fixed it, being more visible all the time, I think is very good for the job environment right now, the work environment. In the olden days, we used to say a good IT person will be totally transparent. Well, that's not the way it is anymore. You can't be transparent anymore. You've got to realize that we want people to know what the value is of the IT staff. So in Pilot, I can very quickly go through, and if I've done an on-site for a customer, as I'm picking up and looking at views, I can put notes and comments in my views. And then at some point, I can say, okay, I'm ready to build a report. And I can pick my heading structure, and I can pick my overall look and feel and say, okay, generate this report. I want it in a PDF format, and I want all the trace files that I use. I want an MD5 checksum done on those trace files, and I want it all zipped up so that I can just hand it off to the customer. And I used to take at least a week at some of these larger locations to build the report of what we found and what needs to be done. Now it's just simple, quick, couple clicks of a button, and my report is built in its color and it's linked, hyperlinked throughout. They did a beautiful job incorporating the reporting mechanism for Pilot.
Well, great. Appreciate your answer on the Pilot. Another question for you. I know I'm kind of setting you up on these questions. You offer free Wireshark training, like a 101, and then you have additional training. Tell us what options are available if people want to follow up with the Laura Chappell training. Okay.
Well, people can go out to chappellu.com and they can see that we have a schedule up online. And that schedule will show people when the free trainings are. Every month I do a free training, whether it's a wireless one or a Wireshark 101 or a Wireshark 201. And we may be coming out with a 301 next month. But, those are the basic things of get your feet wet, get the feel for what it's like to take the online training. And then we have the full Core 1 and Core 2 classes. And these are, 26-hour long courses that are online. They can take it in a modularized format. They can skip around all they want. And they can download the trace files and they can follow through. And there's lab exercises and then there's lab answers online. So the Core 1 and the Core 2 online training are specific to Wireshark, but there are a ton of other classes that I have dealing with things such as traceback and reconnaissance, using NetScan tools. We've got some courseware that deals with Nmap. We've got some general courseware about, the technology, or, how do you do a baseline, or, what are the top 10 reasons the network is slow? We've got another one on spotting suspicious traffic patterns on the network. And all of these are online training courses. And what we did was we created something called the All Access Pass. So somebody can go online and take any of the training courses anytime they want from any location they're at. They just log into their account and they take a look at that. And we're just about to record the 1-hour training session that will provide them with information on the new version of Wireshark. What's coming up? What are the new features? How do you use those new features? Where did it change? So we'll have another class that's going to be uploaded within a week to All Access Pass. So I'm constantly, developing new material for the All Access Pass members, and it's great because I don't have to travel around. They don't have to travel around, and they can take the training when they need it, where they need it, and they can focus in on the topics they're most interested in.
So a lot of people have heard the word online training and see it as simple as a straight up webinar, which are free, to full interactive courses. Where does your online courses, what kind of describe what online course experience would be for the end user?
Okay. Well, let's say somebody gets an All Access Pass and they have access to all of the recorded courses that are online. We also have special All Access Pass events that occur every single month. And in fact, I believe we have one coming up next week, which is where I'm going to be working specifically and talking to a live audience. We're all live there. We will be looking specifically at TCP problems. What are the most common TCP problems? And I'm going to be taking that audience through a problem that I encountered at a customer, which had to do with a mismatch of TCP capabilities. We've got a client here at Office A, and we've got the server at Office B, location B. And in between those two, we've got a security device that has a different set of TCP capabilities than the two end devices. And no matter how much they tried to negotiate the hottest capabilities for TCP, that device in the center was stripping all of that out during the connection process. So we have these live sessions where, something will come up and I'll go out online or on site somewhere and I'll hit some problem and it's like, oh, we've got to do a training for the All Access Pass people. I want them to know, what this looks like when you have this kind of a problem with, SQL Server communications. This is what the packets look like. So we regularly do these live events, and people, they sit there live with me and they ask questions through the live training event. And then I'll stop and I'll go through some of the questions with them. And it's very casual. I've got Wireshark running on my system. Sometimes I'll stop and just do something live right then and there. We had a great one where we worked and did a wireless LAN class, and I wanted to show everybody, the effects of this Uniden phone that I've got, one of those lovely phones that messes with the wireless network. And I said, okay, I'm just going to turn this on, and this is going to be great. Let's watch what happens with the retry count. in my packets, and I have this color-coded and all. And of course, I turned on the phone and just killed my own connection for hosting the event, just for a short amount of time. But it was enough that we could actually see the packets, we could see the retry, and then boom, nothing happened. And then all of a sudden it came back. But we could see this flat line of no network communications while the phone was on. And of course, I killed my own connection for that too. But that's the best way to teach, is to teach in a real environment.
The funny part with that is, of anyone who would know better, you're running a mission critical app over the wireless LAN. That's kind of funny. Well, I appreciate your time today. We learned a lot about your Wireshark book, Wireshark in general, and network analysis. I think it's a skill that everyone who's involved in networking needs to know. And if you want to learn, Laura is the best place to go and learn the skills, not just Wireshark, but networking and the whole TCP stack in general. Well, where can they track you down on a URL?
Probably the best way to reach me would be they can go out to chappellu.com, and that's CHAPPELLU.com. And that will take them straight into the Chappell Seminars listing, what's going on. You'll see that you can contact me straight from that site, and you'll see links from there out to the Wireshark Book website as well.
Well, thanks again for your time. I'll make sure we put those links in the show notes. And good luck with your new Wireshark book. Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot, Keith. I appreciate it.
Interesting facts, little-known tidbits, things you might not have known, short little bits to set your mind a-reeling.
So one thing that I think is kind of interesting is a perception in the industry concerning 802.11n and multiple input, multiple outputs use of multipath. And the perception is that any multipath is useful to MIMO. And that's not exactly true. Although multipath is useful to multiple in, multiple out, the problem is that the best advantage is realized by 802.11n systems that can gain access to uncorrelated multipath as opposed to correlated multipath. In order to get uncorrelated multipath, you have to have separation between the antennas, and that produces individual spatial streams. So just having antennas that are receiving the same spatial stream doesn't give you the advantages that you would get if you can separate those out. The ways that you can separate the spatial streams and create uncorrelated multipath are to split the antennas apart by factors of half wavelength distances, and also to create obstructions that result in a non-line of sight type of a connection. The problem with the non-line of sight connections is that usually is going to reduce the signal to noise ratios, which is going to have an adverse effect. So just keep that in mind. Not all multipath is advantageous to MIMO.
Elevator speech. Our guests have just 2 minutes to tell us all about their product or service offering. Ready, set, go.
Hi, I'm Dave Coleman with AirSpy Training, and I want to talk about a brand new book that's coming out, and that's the new Cybex CWSP Study Guide that is actually shipping in February of 2010. It's a brand new CWSP Study Guide. Co-authors are myself, David Westcott, who I've written several books with, Sean Jackman, and Brian Harkins. We're pretty excited about this book because it covers everything that you should know about wireless security for passing the CWSP exam, anywhere from legacy security to encryption ciphers, AAA and authentication and authorization solutions, as well as fast secure roaming solutions and IDS solutions. We hope this book will aid you in passing the CWSP exam, and even more importantly, we hope that you can use it as a reference guide for wireless LAN security in general.
Things every wireless LAN professional needs to know. Gear up, buckle down, and stand by for the real techie stuff.
Hello again, this is Keith Parsons, and today we have Todd Lammle, who's CEO of GlobalNet Training. He's a very popular author. He's published over 50 books, most of which with Cybex Publishing. He's a gifted speaker and presenter and definitely knows his Cisco stuff. Today, our topic is the Cisco Wireless Certification Program. I personally have attended one of Todd's classes and can highly recommend him as an instructor in the wireless arena. Todd, can you tell us about Cisco's wireless programs and the different ways you can get trained in there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Keith. Thank you for the invite, and I'm glad that you were able to make it to class. And Keith is a CCNA Wireless, by the way.
Thank you. Because of you, I passed the test, so there we go.
well, because of you, and you studied hard and worked hard and did all the hands-on labs.
That had something to do with it, I'm sure.
And partly because of me, yeah, I guess. Anyways, Cisco has created a new path. I guess it's been out for over a year now for wireless, and it goes from beginning to end. So they have a very good stepping stone path, which is kind of nice. And they do start off with some basic fundamentals of wireless, which is good because Cisco in their other courses before this path was just so Cisco-centric, and unless you knew wireless, which there was no training of at that time, you had no way to follow them on what their product line was. And since Cisco had acquired all their wireless gear at that time, it was pretty spread out on what you needed to understand. But now they have the Cisco Unified Wireless Network, which is a really great product. The problem with this product is, and I'll tell you for everyone listening, is it's really hard to build a home lab. It's very expensive gear. So, the least amount of gear you're going to end up spending is maybe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on, and that's on eBay used if you can even find it. But with that being said, there are, the CCNA course and the objectives cover half of just wireless fundamentals, and then the other half is specifically Cisco Unified Wireless Networks. They don't talk about any other vendors. So, and of course, it's all lightweight. In other words, all autonomous, lightweight access points. So you have a controller right off the bat, a controller network, and that's really what we should do with our networks today. Cisco does have a consumer business side they call the 500 series, which is somewhat less expensive, but still overpriced for home use. But the enterprise editions is the 2000 series, 2100s. Now they have we were using the 4400 controllers, and now they have the 5500s if you can get your hands on those. But the course covers all of the controllers, of course, different modules, how to upgrade a standalone access point to autonomous or lightweight, and as well as configuring and troubleshooting and other software products that Cisco uses to manage the network. Wireless control system, something they call WCS. Again, very expensive, but a great tool nonetheless. So it took me, for when I was writing my CCNA Wireless book, probably almost $20,000 in gear to put it all together. From an ACS server for 802.1x authentication through WCS, and then some various controllers, LAN controllers for Cisco. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you is this isn't just the basic CCNA or entry level, like you can go to eBay and buy some $25 routers or $50 routers. That's not feasible yet today. Hopefully in the future. But this is a great course, or I should say a great path. So let me talk about the path other than just the course. And in the course notes, you'll see a figure, but also you'll see these paths on my blog at lamley.com/blog. This same figures is shown there, and I wrote about it. But we'll start off with the CCNA Wireless, and then Cisco has announced the CCNP Wireless. I think it would have been better called the CCWP, but not sure why they didn't call it that. That's something Cisco decided to do. But I got to tell you, that is a very difficult course. I've been through the courses when they came out for the Train the Trainers, as I'm a Cisco authorized instructor, and they're pretty meaty. There's a lot of great material in there. If you're going to get if you know someone that's a CCNP Wireless, they really know their Cisco Unified Wireless Network, so put it that way. The Cisco Unified Wireless Network is what Cisco created to, almost like a Cisco Fusion, I guess, is what they used to call it when they would get a bunch of products, put them together and create and run the same operating system. So once you finish the CCNA, you have to take your CCNA, basic routing and switching CCNA. That's today. I have a feeling sometime towards the end of 2010, that very well may change, but I don't know that as a fact. So right now you need your CCNA routing and switching, then your CCNA wireless. And by the way, these tests are $250 a piece. So they are not cheap. Nothing in this arena in Cisco certifications is inexpensive today. So if you get your certifications, it is an investment. It is a great investment, though. You should get your money back, no problem. The CCNP is 4 tests. The names of these are pretty long, and again, I'll show these in the course notes, and they're on my blog, the name of the courses. And it's hard to kind of find a CCNP wireless course right now. 4 weeks. There are some various companies that teach them. I won't advertise companies right now, but there are some, but very few. The reason is you basically need $500,000 in equipment to teach that class. So it's a pretty tough class to put on. But my parent company that I'm a sponsored organization under does teach that class, and they do very well at it because there's no one basically teaching those courses. So once you take your CCNA wireless and then your CCNP wireless, I think you're ready for your CCIE wireless. So there is so much material in the CCNP wireless, and if you keep studying and you build this gear and you build a home lab or have some way to rent this gear, good luck. Then you'll be able to, head towards your CCIE wireless. And I believe as of this writing, Keith, that if I remember right, there's only 4 or 5 people that have passed that. And most of those people, I know one of them came from my parent company, authorized company, but the rest of them all were people that worked on the actual CCNP wireless and the CCIE wireless track themselves that passed it. So I don't know anybody else that's passed other than I think maybe we're at 5 or 6 now.
Okay. Well, so just to recap there, you have to first get your CCNA. That's just a regular routing and switching one. And then and after you get that, you can take the Cisco CCNA Wireless, and that's adding the additional wireless pieces. You mentioned the CCNP wireless. Do you have to take all the CCNP courses and get a routing and switching CCNP before you can add the wireless component?
No, actually, that's a good question. You would think since you needed, since they called it a CCNP, but you don't. No, but you need your CCNA wireless. Now, just to make sure that everyone's clear, you don't need to take any of these to get your CCIE wireless or any CCIE. You don't take any courses or tests other than the written. There is a CCIE written that you have to take before you're allowed to take the hands-on lab. And I think off the top of my head it's $1,250 or $1,500 for the actual hands-on lab and $200 or $350 for the written. I haven't been keeping up with those lately, but then again, they're pretty expensive. But that's a good question. I think it wouldn't hurt to have your CCNP because understanding fundamentals of basic routing and switching, I think everyone should have. How do you create wireless networks if you can't route and switch, since that's what all our wireless networks connect to? So, having your CCNP. And speaking of that, let me digress for 1 second. The regular CCNP routing and switching has just changed, and it's a 3-test method, a harder courses, harder tests. So just to keep that in mind, all the Cisco certifications are getting harder and harder and harder to attain.
So somebody who is a Cisco CCNP wireless has obviously done lots of training and quite impressive.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to go through the authorized courses. I can't imagine how you would do it without, because there's so much specific information. And one of the things that as I was writing my CCNA Wireless book, I was so impressed with is the actual course books that Cisco has created for the for the wireless track, CCNA and CCNP. They did a really great job. There's so much information and detail and fundamentals. And same with the new CCNP routing and switching. There's so much, the courseware has gotten so much better than it has, say over the last decade that I've been working with their authorized material. But so their material, you really, to attend a course is pretty important because there's so much material that you are provided with that you can't get anywhere else.
Well, good. I heard your CCNA Wireless book is coming along. Any idea of when that's going to be available for the general public to get a chance to get on? I know that's a tough question to ask an author.
Not really. I guess the answer lies with my technical editor. I'm wondering when he's going to get me back in my last chapter so I can get that out to the public. So
thanks. I appreciate the little poke there.
Parsons, yes. So basically I'm all done with the book. So I'm just going through some final stages and give it another 6 or 8 weeks, I guess, for what they call galley stages, where they lay everything out and you look at it in PDF form of the book, basically. And then once you agree that all the figures are correct and all the typos are fixed and technical inaccuracies are fixed, hopefully there's none of those, and then they'll go and print it out. So hopefully soon. Hopefully soon.
That's good. I'm impressed you've gone through that whole phase, 50 times now?
It is a grueling process. I would wish this upon no one. In the middle late 90s, when I was writing books, I sold a lot of books and made good money. Microsoft books, TCP/IP books, and even the Cisco CCNA book. I sold lots of CCNA books because I was the only Cisco book out basically on Amazon for almost 2 years, 18 months, I think it was, before someone else came out with another book. So I did really, really well. And I really enjoyed writing that book. And an odd story, if I can step back, tell that story, was I was a network manager at AAA at the time, and there was no Cisco material. Obviously, there was nothing on the internet about any of this material, hardly anything. There was no way to find out how to set simple passwords. It was very difficult to configure Cisco equipment at that time. Unless you went and learned from somebody, and they only had one class. I think they were called protocol interfaces. Cisco had that out at that time, I think. But anyways, this was in like 96, 97. But, so I wrote a book and said, okay, I've got, 100 admins that I need to be able to configure. How would I want them to do it? So I wrote this book, and I had already been writing my TCP/IP books for Cybex and whatnot for Microsoft. And I went to them and said, I want to write a Cisco book. And they said, what's Cisco? And so I explained it to them. They said, well, we'll give you a chance. You've done real well with your other books. And so I wrote this book. We were just going to go to publish, and I think it was in somewhere beginning of 97. Don't give me a time frame here. I can't remember. Cisco came out with the CCNA. And so I said, stop the presses, because we were actually going to print right then. And so I came back, and my book matched pretty much 90%. So a month later, we went to print with this CCNA book. That's how I had my first book out before anybody else, I guess. I've progressed and published 50 some odd books more, and mostly all on Cisco topics, not all, but mostly. And I'm pretty excited about the CCNA Wireless. I think it's going to be a great book. It's almost, I think, heading towards 1,000 pages. So I want everyone to know that this is not just an easy test of any way, shape or form, as you know, Keith, that is very detail oriented, and you have a lot of hands-on experience. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of hours. And when you mentioned something about someone that has their CCNP wireless, if they didn't go through the courses, then they have the gear, and they spent months and months studying really, really hard. Now, can you find all the information on Cisco's website? Sure, there is a lot of information out there now. You can gather all that information, and I don't believe there's any published books out on the CCNP Wireless. I'm sure Cisco's working on them. I do not plan on writing one. The CCNA Wireless was pretty tough. So my next book will be another CCNA basic. When they change the CCNA and CCNA security and so on. Some of those other books I'm working on. But you really have to have hands-on experience. You can't pass these tests just by reading something on the website, PDFs, and studying. You need to get on the gear, and that goes for all their tests. And going beyond the wireless, just a regular CCNA. If you come to my CCNA boot camp, regular routing and switching, we go from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. every night, and all of that time, most of that time, is spent just on hands-on labs. We got a 250-page lab book, so that's just an equivalent of what we do in the CCNA Wireless as well. As you know, Keith, and you come there, you have, gear in front of you. Now I have all my gear online, but at that time the gear was sitting in front of you, and all you did was configure gear all day long, because that's the only way you'll pass these tests, is by doing the labs over and over again. Lots of repetition.
Well, great. I appreciate your time here today talking to us about the Cisco Wireless Certification programs. Any last words?
Yeah, study hard. I really encourage people to get some type of wireless training. And, if you're not using Cisco, then I don't believe that the Cisco track would be for you, because it is so Cisco-centric. Everyone I know obviously uses Cisco, because that's all I do. And anybody that calls me or comes to my classes know that Todd Lammle is synonymous with Cisco training and Cisco consulting. So, and by the way, there's so much opportunity out there. I do a lot of wireless consulting. As a matter of fact, my consulting company, which I've had since '97 as well, I was doing, of course, routing and switchings and VLANs and, just basic IP, VLSM, and so on. And now all I do is wireless consulting. That's it. There's so much call for it that, it's almost a full-time job just doing wireless consulting that I believe most people could do with just some fundamental training.
Well, great. That's a nice end to our conversation here today. Todd, how can anyone track you down if they need to ask you questions or find out the courses and the things you do?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. The best way to get a hold of me is to my forum and or blog. And both of those are at www.lammle.com, Lammle.com. And my training company, my Cisco authorized training is sold by GlobalNet Training. And so that's www.globalnettraining.com. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I get emails from my forum. My forum is the best way. I love it when people post stuff because, then everyone gets to see the answers. So if you have a basic general question, you can privately reach me through my forum. And I highly encourage people to go read my blog. I have very interesting information on IPv4 exhaustion, the networking stack on Vista. There's some interesting stuff you should read. It goes way back. So scroll way back in my blog. I also have this path, the CCNA path, the new CCNP. Regular routing and switching is out there on my blog. I just put that out last week. The CCNP Wireless and the CCNA Wireless information about that on there as well.
Great. Well, put those URLs in the show notes. And thank you for your time. We're done.
Thank you. I enjoyed being here, Keith. Thank you very much.
Well, that was a lot of good information. We're glad you were able to listen through and hear about Laura Chappell's Wireshark book, as well as Todd Lammle and the CCNA Wireless. Again, we look forward to more work and more sounds and more recordings coming from Interop next week. We'd love to have you listen in and tell your friends about Wireless LAN Weekly. And if you have any feedback at all, feel free to send that to feedback@WLANpros.com. That's the shortened version of wirelesslanprofessionals.com. Well, we'd be glad to hear from you and see if there's anyone else you'd like us to bring on board and talk. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Wireless LAN Weekly, a podcast focused on the needs of wireless LAN professionals. We look forward to your feedback. Please leave your comments at the bottom of the show notes, or email feedback on the show can be sent to feedback@wirelesslanprofessionals.com. If you'd like to leave a voicemail feedback, just call 24/7 and leave a message at 1-801-481-9018. Until next time, this has been another production of wirelesslanprofessionals.com, a place to educate, inform, entertain, and inspire.